Hi Delvers, welcome to another lesson. In this lesson, we'll be talking about data types. You see, in SQL, data types are very, very important. And not just SQL, I think it's any programming language. Data types are very important because it makes the tool you're using, it makes the tool understand what you are trying to communicate. You see, when you start, say for example, you want to start querying things, you want to manipulate data, you see, it's important that you have a proper knowledge of what data types are, because that is how you can interact with the data to get what you require from the data. So basically in SQL, we have about 4 major data types. We have strings, we have the numeric data type, now we have date and time, and we have the Boolean. And I'm just going to run through them quickly. I'm just going to put them here so it's very clear on what we are doing. So we have the strings, and I'm going to explain them quickly. It's a bit of a theoretical class, but I think it's also fine that we lay this important foundation, because without this foundation, it will be very difficult for you to play around your data. It will be very, very difficult. So we have date and time, and we have the Boolean. All right, so strings, let's just double down a bit on strings. Strings basically will refer to free text, like words, like place. Say for example, the name of it, maybe you have a first name, you have last name, you have the name of a company. So basically anything that is not numeric will be strings. So, and you have different types of strings. So on the strings you have I mean, there are different ways. I think maybe that's the way to say it. There are different ways or different types different ways you can save strings in SQL. So you have the char, which is like a fixed value, that char. Then you have the varchar, which is more like the most popular, and I use that very often. You have the varchar, which the char basically is like when you have a fixed length of the string, when you know that, okay, this string will always have like 5 letters, like a fixed length, while the varchar is like variable length, you see, and that's why it's more widely used. You have the medium text, which is a type. I would write all of these so that I can explain all at once. You have the long text, which is another type. Then you have the tiny text, which is another type. So basically, these 3, and I think you also have test. You also have test. Yeah. So basically, I'm just gonna drop down that. Basically, these 3 or this 4 is used to save paragraphs of data. So I'm just gonna drop them down to explain that. So they are all used to save, like when you have like paragraphs of data. So maybe you have data stored in a paragraph. So it's used to save paragraphs of data. So you're used to save like lots of data within one cell. And now they come in different capacity. Now the medium text, the maximum space that it can save is 16 megabytes. That's the maximum that can be saved under that. And the long text, the maximum is 4 MB. So it depends on the amount of data you're trying, or the amount of paragraphs, how heavy the paragraph is, and that's what will determine which of these you're using. You have the tiny text, which is just about 255 bytes. 255 bytes. And then you have the text, which is about 64 kilobytes. 64 KB. So basically that's that on strings. So once you know these, then you know what to use for the kind of data you're trying to process on SQL. The next one will be numeric, and just as the name implies, numeric, I'm just going to put string, I'm just going to put words. The numeric, just as the name implies, it refers to numbers, and that makes sense, numbers. And you can save numeric data also in different types. You have the tiny int, Then you have the small ints rather. You have the small ints. I know this is a bit theoretical, but I think in our next lesson it's going to make sense when we begin to play around data. Then you know how to apply these things. Then you have the medium int. You have the medium int, and you have the int, which almost everybody uses. That's integer basically. So tiny int, small int, medium int. Then you have the int, which is used for most times whole numbers, which I use consistently. You have the big int, and then you have the decimal. So those are the different ways by which we can save numeric data in SQL. Now, the next one is date and time. Now, date and time is pretty tricky. Now, I'm saying it's tricky because you can save date and time in different ways. And it's tricky also because sometimes date and time or date can be saved as a number. Just tell me now. It can be saved, and that gets tricky because you would think it's saved as date and time and you want to query it as date and time, but then you're not getting your result, and that's because it was not saved rightly. You understand? And they look alike. I mean, say for example, I'm writing the data. I'll have just written like 2022. I'll just written like 2022, right? And I'm saying 0101. Now, this looks like, oh yeah, that's a date. But the way you save it matters. If you save it wrongly, it can just be saved as a text. And you're trying to query it, you're not getting your results. It's coming up with an error, and that's because it wasn't saved rightly. And that's why the importance of data types come in. You must ensure that every data is saved rightly so that when we begin to query, we can get the result that we want. So of the data time, you have things like date, which is just a normal date. Then you have time, which is just a time. Then you have date time, which combines both of them together. You have date time, which combines both date and time together. Then you have date stamp, which like gives an exact time to the tiniest detail. So it gives like the date and then the time and even the seconds. So that's like this timestamp. You have this timestamp. Then you have the year. So these are all under the date and time. And the last but not the least for today will be the boolean. Now, the boolean basically represents true or false at the back end. And most times it's saved as 0 or 1. So we use booleans where is either this or this. So is either 0 or 1. That's the boolean basically. But when we get into the next lessons, we would explain a little bit more how we interact with these data types in real data. I wouldn't want to go into that now, so it doesn't take much of our time, and so this video doesn't get unnecessarily long. But in the next lesson, we would pay more attention to how we can interact with these data types. And I'm so sure that you will learn a lot from that lesson. All right, thank you. Bye.